Regular board meeting of the Bellevue School District Board of Directors for March 7th, 2024 is now called to order. Okay, we will start with roll call.
Jane Norris.
Phil Block.
Carolyn Watson,
Monica Webster.
Ed Kelly Aramaki here online.
yeah. So everyone knows that Dr. Aramaki is online because he's not feeling well today. So thank you. All right, next we have the introduction of the student. And I'll rely on Mr. Harrison for that.
Thank you, President Watson. We are fortunate tonight to have Mr. Olin Lund here. He's an 8th grader at Highland Middle School. His principal, cheering in the back, Susan Thomas, principal, and his brother and sister are back there as well. So welcome, Olin. Just raise the table. You switched tables on me, George. Oh. There we go.
Yeah. Perfect, thank you. Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance, flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Of course. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish people who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Duwamish and Snoqualmie tribes. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here. Since the immemorial, we reflect on the historical context that brings us to reside on this land and accept responsibility to interrupt, erasure. We commit to an ongoing partnership with the Snoqualmie tribe as we listen to, learn from, and lead with their Gwindens.
Thank you. And now it's time for the student update.
All right. Oh. Okay, so my name is Olin Lund. I'm an 8th grader at Highland Middle School. And I just want to say that being at Highland has been a really good experience for me. I just want to thank all my teachers, including my math teacher, Mr. Fritz. He is one of my math helpers. He has been with me since 6th grade to now. And I'm one who struggles from dyslexia. So he helps me a lot with like when I struggle or like when I need help. And I thank him a lot to this day because it just means so much. And without him, I don't know where I'd be in math because it's really hard for me. And I would also really like to thank my IEP case manager, Ms. Clarkson. She helps me a lot too. Whenever I have like anxiety about like school, grades, or anything like that, she's the one that can talk to me and like just make me confident in myself and just know that I'm gonna be okay. And I would also like to thank my great principal, Ms. Thomas. She's made me feel welcome till the first day of 6th grade. And I really appreciate that because I did have a lot of anxiety and I was really scared of middle school. So I want to thank her a lot for making my life a lot easier. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Okay, now it's time, for the acknowledgements. Seem quite a few. Okay. This is Social Work Month, Gender Equality Month, Women's History Month, National Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, Youth Art Month, Music in Our Schools Month, Irish American Heritage Month, National Nutrition Month. On February 29th through the 19th of March, it was Baha'i 19th Day Fast. On the 2nd of March, it was Read Across America Day. From the 3rd of March to the 9th of March, it's National World Language Week. From the 3rd of March to the 9th of March, it was National Social Worker Week. I guess that connects back to Social Work Month up there. And then we had on March 3rd to March 9th, National School Breakfast Week. Then on March 8th, we had Maha Shivaratri, the festival for the Lord Shiva. And on the 8th, we had International Women's Day. And on the 10th, we had Ramadan, and starting at sundown. And then on March 11th through the 15th, we will have Education Support Professionals Week. So a lot of things going on in March. Thank you. All right. And next we are going on to the swearing in of our new school board director. Oh, whoops, I skipped. All right, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, so any comments or discussion? All right, all in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, no one opposed, so the agenda will stand. Now, I will over-eagerly swear in the new school board director. And I will say this is normally a duty of the superintendent, but seeing as he's not here right now, I will pinch hit. Okay, so I'm going to read a few words and then you just repeat after me. Okay. I, Cindy Rogan,
I, Cindy Rogan,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
to support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and will faithfully perform the duties of Director of District 3,
and will faithfully perform the duties of Director of District 3,
Bellevue School District number 405 in the County of King,
Bellevue School District number 405 in the County of King,
State of Washington, that one was County of King, State of Washington, according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Okay, you're sworn in. Yeah. All right, please join us on the dais. That's great. So now we have Cindy Rogan with us on the dais here. Now, oh, right. Yes. They see they didn't write introduction of Cindy on the agenda. So, of course.
This is gonna take me a hot minute to get used to this. Hold on. Got it. Testing, testing. You can hear me now? Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Rogan. I'm thrilled to be the new director of District 3. It is an honor and a privilege to serve as your new school board director, and I'd like to thank the board again for appointing me. Most of my adult life has been in service to students, families, and staff in the realm of public education. I have served as a teacher, a PTA co-president, an elementary principal, and prior to starting my business as an executive leadership coach almost 5 years ago, I held the position of executive director of schools here in the Bellevue School District. Those years provided a wealth of experience related to what it takes to thrive as a high-performing district aligned with clear values and a vision that inspires. As I worked in partnership with various iterations of our school board, I was on the other side of this dais. It feels oddly familiar and yet totally unfamiliar to be supporting my community again, but now in this new role. I'm thrilled. As your new director, I'm committed to our collective and collaborative oversight and governance of our district. I have high hopes that our new strategic plan will continue to inspire our students and staff and community to not only excel in their learning, but to do so with a deep sense of belonging and a laser focus on equity and inclusion of all students. I'm looking forward to being in service to my community once again. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Um, Now I think I can do the consent agenda. Sorry for trying to rush too much. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Can I have a second?
I second.
All right, would anybody like to discuss or have anything to say about the consent agenda? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? No, thank you. All right, the consent agenda has passed. And now it's time for the superintendent update, and we will turn to Dr. Aramaki for that.
All right, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. Yeah, sorry I can't be there. I am under the weather. I thought I'd feel better by today, but I don't. So it's always incredible to think that we can participate like this online when we need to. And so I'm thankful for that opportunity. I'll just start by saying, March is Women's History Month, and the field of education, this profession has long been built on the hands of women. Over 75% of people who work in education are women. And so I just want to start by honoring all the women in our system, from the school board directors, including our newest director, Cindy Rogan, to all of our teachers and support staff, district office staff, just for incredible dedication and hard work. And so just so much to celebrate and honor this month during Women's History Month and every month. Let's go to the next slide. I just have a few updates that I want to share with the community. The first one is around transportation. Buses are back on track. This is a huge celebration for us. Parents know that starting in September, we've been canceling, upwards of 6 routes a week, which has created great instability and families trying to find ways to get their kids to school. But for the past 3 weeks now, we've had no cancellations, and we're thrilled about that. But we're not taking our foot off the gas pedal. We're going to continue to recruit and hire bus drivers. Almost all of our routes are staffed, and we have some bus drivers who are filling in on an on-call basis. We have additional drivers that are in training. We are planning a transportation summit for this spring to talk with our community about the strengths and challenges of transportation, ideas that people have, equitable access to transportation, how we can increase efficiency, and collaborate with city and local government. And coming soon, we're going to be doing a campaign to get our kids back on buses. A lot of families have opted to not use transportation because of the instability, but we'd love to get kids back on buses. And so you'll be seeing a campaign coming out soon about that. Next slide. Again, welcome to Cindy Rogan, our school board director for District 3. I just wanted to share a few things just about the process in case people are curious. All of this is on the website, and we're going to be pushing this out in our next BSD news and events. But for those who are listening and online, we had 8 applicants who applied for District 3, all incredible people. And I'll just say that we are so thankful for people putting their names in the hat in order to serve the community in this way. We just were so taken by how remarkable the applicants were. Incredible volunteers, people who have committed so much time to our community, and we are thankful for the interest in that role. We had 8 applicants. We narrowed it down to 5 semifinalists who were chosen to interview in a public meeting on February the 15th. And then from those interviews, we chose and when I say we, it's the school board, because this entire process is run and driven by the school board when there's an appointment. And so 2 finalists were chosen by the school board to follow up in conversation with the school board, which happened on the 26th of February. From there, the board deliberated in executive session. And so it was just the board directors, no staff except for our general counsel was there with the board directors. But the board spent quite a bit of time deliberating on who would be the best candidate for this seat. And I just want the community to know I'm so impressed and thankful for the school board for taking the time that they did and putting the thought that they did into selecting a school board director. I know that they looked at qualifications, they looked at passion, they looked at the ability to serve, they looked at a whole bunch of different factors, and in the end, chose who they thought would be the best fit for this position. And so the board deliberated, selected Cindy Rogan on the 26th of February with the swearing in tonight. And so congratulations to Cindy Rogan. Cindy's bio is now up on the website. And so if you want to see a little bit more about Cindy, you can look online under school board. But you'll see that Cindy comes from a long line of educators, including herself being a teacher and a principal. And as of 5 years ago, serving as an executive director here in the Bellevue School District. And so Cindy has a deep understanding of the work that we have done in the past and what we're striving to be as a school district. But she also has family who've been educators, including her father, who was a regional superintendent. And so just a family legacy of passion and care for schools and for education. And so all of that is online if you want to check that out. And again, in BSD News and Events, we will be pushing out just information about Cindy and about the process that was followed in order to select a board director. Next slide. Just a couple things about budget planning. And so I think a lot of people have seen this, but I have put out an article on our website, and we put it out in the most recent BSD News and Events about budget planning. And so last fall and winter, we were talking a lot about the potential middle school consolidation, and since have shifted into looking at making some budget cuts around upwards of $10 million for next school year. And so I don't want to belabor this. All of this is on the website and was pushed out in news and events. But a couple things I'll point out was the school board had spent a session developing guidance for me in order to kind of determine how to proceed with looking at our budget. And so those are listed on this slide here. But the main things that the board talked about: prioritizing students and keeping cuts furthest away from the classroom, finding ways to reduce the budget through efficiencies and trimming versus elimination of programs or services, maintaining equitable supports, building on educational excellence, and doing everything we can to retain and attract students to the Bellevue School District. And then working with community partners like the Bellevue Schools Foundation to increase revenue through community donations. So that's the guidance that we got from the board. More details on the website. And then the next slide, I also shared this in the article that I had written, but this is just to give the community a preview of what that means. And so basically taking the board direction, this is the general direction that I'm going to be heading with my staff around budget cutting. And so I just want people to see this, mostly so that people who are worried about major cuts to programs and things like that can kind of see that we're trying to avoid that. But basically, the 5 areas that I'm looking at are decreasing central office spending by increasing efficiencies, looking at MSOC cuts. MSOC is our basically material supplies and operating costs. And so looking at cutting our MSOCs, aligning staffing to enrollment. So as kids come into schools, just to make sure that our staff are aligned to the number of kids that we have, not more, not less, doing some reduction of spending on operations, and then reducing contracted paraprofessionals. And so that last one is basically when we're hiring paraprofessionals or support staff that work with kids, we try to hire as many as we can in the Bellevue School District. When we aren't able to recruit enough people, we use contracted services, which is very, very expensive. And so between our HR department, our special education department, we are working to reduce our dependency on contracted paraprofessionals, which is going to save us around $1 million. So that's just to give the community a preview. Hopefully that gives people a sense of where we're heading. And I just want to allay any fears that are out there that people might have about cutting major programs and things like that, which is what we're going to try to avoid this year. Next slide. With that, we are in open enrollment now. Open enrollment started on March 1st. And at the same time, we are in the middle of course selection for all of our secondary students. And I'm just calling this out because we are excited. I mean, the things that we are able to offer and do in the Bellevue School District is really, really remarkable. And so I would love it if parents and our community members would go to our website. We have it right there at the top that you can click on our course catalog for middle and high school, and prepare to be just stunned at what we're offering to kids. For our middle schools, we are adding the options of kids taking Hindi or Korean in addition to Arabic this year. And so we're using Bellevue Digital Discovery in order to provide languages that we wouldn't necessarily have enough kids at each school to offer. And so we're excited about the new language offerings that are starting at middle school this coming year. Our CTE department continues to innovate and do incredible things, but we're adding an advanced costume design class, an advanced baking and pastry class. We are going to be adding a maritime welding class at Interlake High School. I like to call it underwater welding. I think some people do weld underwater, but I think even if your feet are in the water, it's considered maritime or underwater welding. And so we're going to be offering that course. And then we're expanding our introduction to aviation and engineering design. So a lot of exciting things happening in the field of CTE that are listed in our course catalog. And then the last thing I'll just mention is we are thrilled to have included AP African American Studies in our course catalog for this coming school year. And so kids, as they're going through course selection, will be able to say whether they're interested in that class or in any of these other classes. And then we'll look to see what we can do about being able to offer the classes, because what we do in Bellevue is we offer classes based on student interest. And so we're excited to have AP African American Studies in our course catalog, and we're hoping that a lot of kids are interested in taking that this coming school year. Next slide. I just want to shout out our Bellevue Schools Foundation partner. Spring for Schools is their big fundraiser that's coming up on March 30th at 5 o'clock at the Maidenbauer Center. We'd love to see families and community members show up. We are working with the Bellevue Schools Foundation to try to raise as much funds as possible for the school district. They are committed to helping us close as much of that $10 million gap as they possibly can in partnership with our community. And then related to that, in closing, my last slide, I just want to show you a picture. If you could capture joy in a photograph, this might be it. But the Bellevue Schools Foundation, in partnership with Kids Quest Children's Museum and the Bellevue School District, we are sending all of our preschool kids to Kids Quest as part of their first field trip experience. And then at the same time, Kids Quest is doing kind of a visiting field trip to every kindergarten class with this idea that joy starts in preschool and kindergarten in the Bellevue School District. And so you can see on the left, kids, the first time riding a bus. We have special buses, special seats for preschool kids. And then that second picture is the picture of joy. If I were to capture joy in a picture, I mean, just kids touching, playing with water. The next one, kids learning, what it might look like if they were to work on a farm, cleaning up after cows, things like that. And then just who doesn't like climbing on top of trucks? We're thankful for our Kids Quest partner for bringing joy to our pre-K and K kids. And we are thankful to the Bellevue Schools Foundation for making that happen for us. And so that is the end of my superintendent comments. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. I love these photos. Okay, so now it's time for public comment, and since Mr. Harrison has the list of who is giving us the comment and so forth, I'll let him kind of take over this section.
Yes, good evening again. We have 4 public commenters tonight. We have 1 online, so we'd like to start with our online commenter. What I would ask each of our commenters to do is when you, before you start, please introduce yourself and let us know who you are before you start your comment. So after our online commenter, we will move to our 3 in-person commenters.
Okay. And just before that, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit of the public comment guidelines just so that I put it out there. You can read the more detailed on the slide, but we have 20 minutes. Each person can get 2 minutes to talk. The number of comments is limited, so please use your time wisely. And if you have written documentation, you can hand it to our board secretary, Monica Namila, over there. And then make sure when you come up that everything stays civil and we don't say anything that's libelous or slanderous or is an unwarranted invasion of privacy, anything obscene or indecent, nothing that would violate the school district policy on harassment, intimidation, bullying, or discrimination. Please don't incite an unlawful act or violate a lawful school regulation, and don't create material or substantial disruption of the orderly operation of the board meeting. So that said, we'll start with commenter number 1.
Hi, Melinda. I'm going to unmute your camera and your microphone. You can go ahead and start when you're ready.
Great. Thank you. Hi, thanks for letting me speak today. My name is Melinda Illian, and I am here today as a parent and Bellevue Schools Foundation trustee and grants co-chair. This year, the Grants Committee had the pleasure of distributing almost $1 million to various programs, big and small, that impacted the education and well-being of every student and staff member in the district. We were able to fund educational excellence initiatives like pre-K through 8 computer science curriculum development and support of teacher board certification, as well as mental health supports, art projects, music clinicians, author visits, and that fantastic preschool experience that Dr. Aramaki was talking about. While we were able to fund almost $1 million worth of programs, we also had to make heart-wrenching decisions not to fund almost $300,000 worth of innovative ideas from our classroom teachers. And that made us very sad. It's very difficult to say no to a teacher that has a fantastic idea. But the foundation does not have a fancy endowment fund or $1 million corporate backing to fund these programs. We rely on our community to donate the money the foundation uses to support and promote the innovation and education excellence the Bellevue School District is known for. The foundation funding to the district is not restricted in the same way that the state and Loving funding is restricted. And so the more money we can raise, the more money the foundation can use to help close the $10 million funding gap to preserve those programs that are super important to the community. And as such, I would like to invite you all to join us at our annual Springs for Schools fundraiser on March 30th at Meidenbauer Center at 5 p.m. As Dr. Aramaki mentioned, we have a fantastic garden party planned, including a massive showcase of all of the different programs that we fund in the classrooms this year. You can sign up on our website, bellevueschoolsfoundation.org, and I look forward to meeting you all there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yinging.
Good afternoon. We are robotics representatives from Interlake High School, and my name is Ying.
My name is Allison.
And we are so grateful for this opportunity to speak today. So we just wanted to update you all on our endeavors and how we've been improving our club with your support. So back in the first few weeks of school, our advisor was getting retrained, so we were not able to meet. But right after the slow start, we sprang back into recruiting members and training them in relevant skills like mechanics, electrical engineering, and programming. And at our orientation, we specifically encouraged the new members to try out everything from marketing to coding to really give everyone a view of the wide range of opportunities that FIRST Robotics and our team has to offer. So back in last summer, actually, we taught this summer camp, and that's part of our wider initiative to not only reach out to Interlake students via recruiting, but also reach out to the broader community to promote STEM education. So at our summer camp, it was actually our 11th annual cycle of this called Saints Engineering and Robotics Camp. And We had local elementary schoolers join us to learn Scratch programming and some engineering skills.
Okay. And we also have tried to incorporate FIRST Robotics into our school district by partnering with Cherry Crest Elementary Schools to create and mentor 4 new FLL teams. And we've also been working with Bennett Elementary School to begin mentoring 2 more teams. And we've also developed and taught a lesson in partnership with Ardmore Elementary School for their engineering and aerospace unit. And then in January, we kicked off our 2024 season and learned our new challenge for this year. And since then, we've been focused on building our robot. And we wanted to highlight a struggle we experienced after kickoff, where we lost access to our workshop for 2 weeks. And we'd really like to thank the school board for addressing this. But we'd also like to emphasize the importance of timely responses to situations like this, and would like to work with the district to create a more reliable plans for repairs should this occur again. And we'd like to thank you first. Okay. Yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please don't start your testimony until you get to the diet. That way the timer can be run accurately.
Hi, my name is Alex Zimmerman. I live in Bellevue almost 40 years, and I'm 12 times candidate for election here. So situation what is we have right now, I speak about many times. Look, 3 consul come, new consul, a rule not change. Guys, you need to understand what is you doing. This is a pure crime. You violate us Constitution, First Amendment, and freedom of speech. In 9th Circle, make decision dozen time. Go to 9th Circle. You cannot make limit 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Everybody have right to speak. What is you doing right now? This is a crime. By definition, you all criminal. In train you come, nothing change. Why? Because you belong what is I call to them Nazi fascist junta. It's exactly who you are. You understand about talking? Right now I want to speak. I speak with John, Chief of Staff, you know what it means. For last 3 years, you don't have public comment with your staff from your district. Before you have, right now for 3 years, not. And I spoke with him many times. He told me, you don't want this. Why you don't want? Why you don't want with talking people from your district? Are you scared? Who are you? Huh? A bandita, a Nazi, a fascist, a stupid, a psychopath? Why you don't want talking? For 3 years you don't do nothing. Why? I think you're very smart. You scared talk to people face to face. Here you look protection from stupidity law what is you have. You have no constitution, no First Amendment. No, and I speak more than 4,000 times in different cities from Seattle, from Tacoma to Everett, Seattle. I never see a rule like this because you are criminal. You cannot limit people time speak. You understand me? Go in jail. Thank you very much. As I give this to you, yeah, by new rule.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Amory Clark. I am one of the advocacy mentors for the Sammamish robot team, the Robototes. And I'm giving you a quick update on the Robototes and an invitation. Sammamish is hosting a competition on March 23rd and 24th at Sammamish High School. You're all invited. Opening ceremonies are at 11 a.m. on the 23rd. And all 6 of the Bellevue School robotics teams will be there. And I'll leave cards here. If you shoot us an email, we'll arrange for you to have a tour guide with some Bellevue students to guide you around, not just Sammamish. Last weekend, 4 of the Bellevue teams competed at Glacier Peak. We want to call out Big Picture, had their first ever finalist captaincy ever in the history of they're only a couple years old. So it was very exciting. And 3 of the 4 Bellevue teams went on to finals. And on the advocacy side, we've participated in First Legislative Day in Olympia, also the PTA Day in Olympia. We went to Congressman Adam Smith's Tech Fair at the Mercer Island Library, and right now we have 2 of our members at the National PTA Conference, and they're doing great. And we are planning a trip to the DC for the Student Association for STEM Advocacy Conference. And you'll be getting something to approve for that shortly because it has to be approved by you all. So we really want you to approve that. But it's a great program and the kids meet. It's a super great program. So I'll leave cards here, but do shoot us an email if you want to come. You can just come, but we'll have a tour.
Thank you. So next we are moving to the approval of Resolution 2024-02, the final acceptance for the Pac West Mechanical Elementary Boiler Replacements. And I think we'll probably hear from Jack Cloud on that.
Good afternoon. As John indicated, or as President Watson indicated, we're here for the approval of Resolution 2024-02. And this is for completion of the boiler replacements at 3 of our elementary schools. But before I jump into that, I do want to give you a little bit of background information. And I want to thank Director Block for asking the questions. And one of the things that is apparent, we've got new board members. And so this project was approved by the board and awarded the contract last May, but a lot of you weren't available at that time or here or even on the board. So anyway, I want to just take a few minutes and give you a little bit of background on this. And then if there's any other questions, we can go ahead and move ahead with the, hopefully the approval of the resolution. And again, my apologies for this. Sometimes we just get up here and have the resolution, let's get it done and get going. But sometimes it needs a little bit more information so you really understand what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, I apologize for that. We'll do better. Woodridge opened in the fall of 2007, Newport Heights and Sherwood Forest opened in the fall of 2008. These are 3 of the schools that we replaced the boilers in. Each of the schools had 2 boilers. And when the school opened, which was about 15 years ago, the boilers were warranted for 10 years. And that was a standard at that time. So they were well into beyond their life cycle. And so what we have done is look for new boilers now that have a longer warranty. So the ones that we are installing now and specify are 20-year warranty. And then the contractor, just like all of our projects, has to go ahead and provide a 2-year warranty on the installation and workmanship and everything like that with the installation of the boilers. We do specify each school for 2 boilers, so we have some backup redundancy, and we're also able to go ahead and be more efficient. So we don't have to run one single boiler really hard all the time to keep the temperature where it needs to be. So we try to have a lead and lag on our boilers to spread the wear and tear out across both of the boilers. The schools that we identified here were the last elementaries that we built that utilize hot water condensing boilers. Everything from 2008 on, starting with Eastgate, uses ground source, which is anywhere from about 70 to 95, 300-foot deep wells where the water circulates down through at kind of an ambient water temperature of about 54 degrees. And then basically it is circulated through the building. The temperature, the warmth is extracted from the water through air to water heat pumps and then distributed to the school that way. So there's not a boiler that's involved in heating the water and the rest of it. So since 2008, all of our elementaries have gone to this type system. We do have a small boiler that we put in line. So if the temperature drops down where we're get down below 30 degrees at nighttime for an extended period of time, sometimes we have to run that boiler to put a little bit more heat into that well field to make the system be more efficient. But that's the only thing. So in other words, I'm not going to be coming back for a whole lot of boiler replacements because of that, even though we still have boilers at the high schools. And the reason that we have it at high schools, the hot water condensing boilers, is that you've been to our high schools, you know that we have an awful lot of parking lot, we have an awful lot of play fields and ball fields and the rest of it. And so we don't have the physical space to go ahead and drill all those wells because we were doing ground source after the high schools had all been built and the sites developed. And the number of fields, the number of wells that would be required would be a huge number, probably approaching 200, just to be able to heat the size of our physical plants. So anyway, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about what we're doing here. Our systems are based on and how we replace them. We use capital levy dollars. So these are not part of our general fund, even though maintenance is part of the general fund. Because these projects are larger in scale and scope, then we go ahead and pay for that out of our capital levy dollars. So that gives us relief to the general fund, but it also enables us to do a project in the nature of this one, which is like $980,000 or something for all of that. So one of the things that we do is we look at how do we determine which ones we're going to replace? It's not strictly just when the school was built and when we have to replace the boiler, but we look at the life cycle, how hard that system has been run, what our diagnostics show us about how it's performing, and if we're having problems with any of the heat exchangers, things like that, that we can tell that this thing is, we're going to have some failure issues. The last thing we want to do is go through our usual seasons here where we need heating quite often to be able to make sure that we don't have failure. So we're always looking at, are we going to be able to keep this thing going? We've got some redundancy, but we want to make sure that we don't get into a situation where the staff and the students and whatnot are cold. Anyway, we have a schedule that we utilize, which is every year we go through our capital levy fund and we allocate dollars for this type of projects. And it's not only just boilers, it's everything from small works things where we have to build maybe a storage building. For an example, at Bellevue High, we did a new storage building inside the stadium like we've done at all of our high schools to bring us up to a certain standard. So that's what those capital levy dollars are used for. We go ahead and allocate projects based on need, life cycle issues, and the rest of it. Because again, the thing we have to do with the capital levy dollars is ensure that our buildings are going to last for the 50 or 60 years that we designed them for. So that's certainly the intent of that. So that's a little bit of background in terms of why we're doing this. So if that answers some of your questions, basically we had a contract that was awarded by the board last May for PacWest Mechanical, which was the lowest responsible bidder, with a bid of $849,000 for replacing 6 boilers, 3 at each of the schools. And we also had hot water tanks that we replaced at that time that were also of the same age and the same type of life cycle. And one of the things is a lot of the boiler rooms are very compact and whatnot. So as soon as you can't just go in and just replace one thing without moving some other things out of the way. So this enables us to be efficient and replace all of the mechanical systems in the system that need to be replaced. So I'm here, we've had an engineer of record, which is Metrics, and they have approved that the contract documents have been taken care of and have been carried out per the specifications, and they are recommending acceptance of the project. So for that.
Okay, so we may want a little discussion, but let's start with, would somebody like to move to approve the resolution that you see there in the board docs?
I move to approve the resolution.
All right, does anybody like to second that?
I second that.
Okay, now we'll open for discussion. I got my handy die. Okay, it comes up, Director 5 can lead this discussion.
All right. Jack, I so much appreciate all the work you do and with your team. I always feel that we're in good hands with you and your team. One question I had regarding, you mentioned about the that at the high school and also the buildings that's prior to 2008 have boilers.
Mhm.
And I also understand that we, with the high schools, we're remodeling and so forth. I'm curious, and I know you're really good at this because this is not my field, so I have to defer to you, is that when we're looking at being environmentally conscious and sustainable, are those things thought through when you're to determine whether to hold on to boilers or if there's other methods to, I know we've done the ground source as being more sustainable. But when we do remodeling, obviously you've mentioned that it's more challenged to do something like that. Are there other forms that are being looked at possibly?
Yeah, one of the things the legislature just passed here within the last couple of days is limiting the use of natural gas appliances. And I haven't read through the information enough to know when that goes into effect, but it's sometime coming up in the fairly near future, where gas stoves, residential gas stoves, and gas furnaces, things like that are not going to be sold. They're still going to be supplied with gas through the Puget Sound Energy, but those things are going to start to be limited as part of the greenhouse gas emissions and the rest of it. And so our ground source sites, even though they have one gas boiler that we use to charge that field, as I mentioned, at some cases where we use ethylene glycol, which is an antifreeze product that is in the well field, we have never, so Stevenson, for example, that opened in 2018, we have never turned that boiler on all throughout the year because the ethylene glycol maintains a much more constant temperature. And we did a similar situation at Wilburton, which is also opened in 2018, and we used just the water in the well field loop. And we've had to use the boiler a few times. So efficiency within the whole ground source thing is an important thing, and we've learned lessons there. But when it gets to some of the other school products, and we have to start limiting the use of natural gas boilers, one of the things that we have to look at is that we have to change the whole heating system if we're going to go to an electric type of system, which would be that we could still use an electric boiler to provide heat. The issue with electric boilers right now at the rates, it would go, and the kind of rate that the school district is on, a commercial rate, our cost for electric would go right through the roof on that. So that's one of the things that we have to be concerned about. We have to weigh in then what would it cost us to convert the whole heating system in that school, a high school like Sammamish with 360,000 square feet, be pretty significant cost to change everything over. So we worry in all those types of things. The one thing with the gas boilers right now is because they're available, they're still on the market, they haven't been, you can still buy them, is that we can continue to use those for a period of time and be able to maintain our general fund costs for utilities, which is pretty significant. So there's all these things that we weigh into it, and we're trying to get the most efficient way. But the other thing that we do is by using a lot of photovoltaic solar panels, is that we're able to go ahead and offset a lot of our electrical costs, especially now with the advent of storage batteries. So we can go ahead and use battery power to kind of get the school up to going, and then we can go ahead and kind of evade the startup cost that puts us on what they call a Schedule 152, which is a higher rate for commercial gas or electrical use. So there's a lot of things like that we're doing that is renewable energy to try to offset some of these other things that are kind of hard fixed costs, like the cost of electricity, the cost of natural gas.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about the long-winded
No, I
response.
appreciate the very good detailed answer.
Yeah, you can give me the hook anytime you need to.
All right, Director Block might like to say something.
I want to acknowledge, thank you very much. You already addressed pretty much all of the questions that I had on this document. proactively. I sent them via email, so I really appreciate that. The one thing I think from my perspective, it would be great to have some understanding of the, what's coming and when is it coming, and understanding the life cycle of the various capital investments we have in the district, and just kind of maintaining that and having some transparency to the board about that. It would be helpful.
We could certainly do that.
Okay, so my turn. I want to say I always enjoy the information you bring to the board. And I was at Old Stevenson one morning when the boiler was out with all the kids in the building. So that's not experience my kid was in the portable and the heat was still on, but it's not an experience you want to repeat.
Right.
And then I'll also say that the old school board, just like last year or the year before, we happened to be at Stevenson for some other reason. We were having a workshop, and then you gave us a tour of whatever, I guess you don't call it the boiler room, the heating, facility or whatever. And we went in there, I felt like I was in a science fiction movie with all the colorful pipes and these catwalks and things. So maybe we can do that for the new board sometime when we happen to be, out of the site, and we can see some of these things.
Sure.
Whenever
you want to do that.
Thank you for keeping on top of that. And I will pass it now to Director Rogan.
Thank you. Jack, you are an institution in this district.
Yeah.
I just have to acknowledge and say thank you for your reporting. And it's always so thorough. I always learn so much. And I just really value your value on renewable energy and your focus on making this organization as efficient as possible. So.
Yeah, well, in these general fund crunch times right now, it's kind of nice to be able to have a little bit to offset some of those costs. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with President Watson. I'd love to follow Jack and go look at what's behind the curtain whenever we can.
Sure.
All right, and I'll just echo that sentiment. Thank you so much for all the information that you provide us. And one of the questions that I had kind of piggybacks on Director Block's statement. And I'm just wondering, in the foreseeable future, the upcoming year, do you anticipate how many boilers may need to be replaced? I'm just wondering, because we are keeping track of the diagnostic data and such, do you anticipate any replacements in the upcoming year?
Yes, we have. In fact, our current capital plan that we use to finance these, I'll be coming here in the next, probably sometime within the next 6 weeks with the intent to award a contract for replacement boilers at Lake Hills and international schools. And again, those have been in service since 2004 for Lake Hills and 2003 for international. And the thing is I know international is kind of one of these that we're going to do something, we're not sure what or where, but the one thing is, even if we put new boilers in international, we'll be able to go ahead and pull those out and reinstall them in a new building or a remodeled building or something like that. And that's the case with any of the ones that we have here. Right now, they're in schools that we know we're going to have those schools operating as schools for a while. So we still would have the ability to go ahead and use those, move them to a different location if necessary, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, none of this stuff would be the way a bad investment. But so yeah, we can reuse it. And especially if things get really tight with being able to purchase new gas-fired equipment. So that's one of the things we're trying to hedge our bets on a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think now everyone has had a turn. So I would like to say, could we, everyone in favor of this resolution, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, no opposed or anything. Okay, good. All right, the resolution passed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for all the information. Okay, so now we move on to our reports. And the big report for tonight is the annual plan progress report on literacy and mathematics.
Dr. Aramaki and board directors, thank you so much for this opportunity to share some progress monitoring data with you tonight related to our annual plan. Your comments and questions at the pre-meeting on Monday were terrific, and we truly appreciate the time that you took to look through the report and to consider and share with us your insights. We really appreciated that. So one question we've been asked a lot this year is how is the recovery effort going in terms of academic proficiency? I mean, we hear this from a lot of people in the community, and it's a big wondering. And so we'll highlight some of that high level data here to answer that question in this report. And as you know, once we start looking at data, we have more questions. You know, data just brings up more questions, and we have this interest in going deeper and deeper. And so you asked several data questions that were not included in the annual report. And we want you to know that we do look at that data. We do a wider and deeper look as part of our progress monitoring. So we are monitoring data such as the DIBELS data, interim assessments, growth data, on track for graduation, mental health data. And so we do that internally frequently. But this report will just focus on the measures that were called for in the annual plan. We can have more conversations about the types of data that we'd like to look at as we look forward to the next annual plan, which will be coming out from our strategic plan process. So for tonight, Dr. Heather Sanchez and Aaron Miller are our chiefs of schools, and they will provide some highlights from the report and then give you some time to share your reflections. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Great to be with you. I think we're ready for the next slide. As Eva shared, we're going to be presenting our literacy, biliteracy progress monitoring report for the annual plan. We're also going to be sharing the math report as well. This is part of our overall focus on educational excellence. And then later this year, you can expect a report on early learning and our future ready focus. As you saw in the full report that we submitted, we do believe we're on track to increase the percentage of students meeting or exceeding proficiency in reading by the end of grades 3 and 8. Next slide.
All right. Good evening, Board of Directors and Dr. Aramaki. When we spent a little time with you on Monday, one of the questions that you asked about was just a little bit more context around the reading and the literacy. So we've added some additional context here. And so what you're looking at is this is a composite score for reading. So this is grades 3 through 5. So just a reminder that in the annual plan, it is 3rd grade specifically, but this gives you a snapshot of 3 through 5. And so we would have all students within the district taking this assessment. And this shows you a broad overview of pre and post pandemic. So it's simply one measure and one way to think about it. But you can see by looking at it that it's, well, if you can do quick math, but it's actually exactly the same percentage, 72% at proficient or above in 1920 and currently the same. So what this means is that we are at the same levels according to this measure as we were pre-pandemic. So it's somewhat of a good news opportunity story because on the one hand, we are not behind. On the other hand, we certainly still have some significant gaps in some areas that we need to address. And so just for context, that red is below standard, that yellow is approaching standard, that green is at standard, and that blue is above standard. Next slide, please.
Okay, so this chart shows the same data for grades 6 through 8. And in the full report, you can see it in more detail. But here, as an elementary, you can see just a high-level trend looking back to, let's say, fall 2018 as compared to fall 2023, where we are now. We are approaching where we were. We're not quite there yet. We were, the green and the blue together, that's the considered proficient or exceeding proficient, was at 77% pre-pandemic, and this fall we were at 74%. So you see the high-level trend is that we are coming back to where we were in terms of overall reading proficiency at the middle school level, and yet we still see those achievement gaps, those historic achievement gaps that existed pre-pandemic, which continue to be a big part of our improvement strategies. Next slide, please.
All right, so progress this year in the area of elementary literacy and biliteracy. So just a spotlight on some of the things that are in progress. So we are very proud to say that we have science of reading curriculum resources in use in every BSD elementary school, especially at the K-1 level, and with some expanded use at the upper grade level. So, you know, like everything else, there's a bright spot and an opportunity here. So while we're proud that we have expanded use and implementation at every school, we also fully recognize that thinking about how to continue to build that skill set and expand the use to upper grade levels is certainly an opportunity for us as well. In addition to that, we continue to expand access to professional development around utilizing science of reading strategies. So we have cohorts of educators continuing to go through letters training, Orton Gillingham training, UFly training. And so each year we've been able to fold in more and more as we build more systemic capacity around the implementation of science of reading strategies. And also this year, we have added LAP or reading interventionist staffing at our highest need schools, which is something we have done in the past. And we're proud that despite our lean times, we are able to continue to prioritize that. And for the first time ever, we have added interventionists at our dual language choice schools, LAP interventionists. So Puesta and Jingmei have LAP interventionists this year as well. And additionally, we have reached full implementation of Spanish and Mandarin language and literacy assessments. This is something that's been a work in progress, lots of hard work through our MLL department and our dual language department and our teaching and learning department and all of the educators within our dual language programs that are working diligently to build biliteracy with our students. And as you are aware, this year we have launched the first public Arabic bilingual program in the state of Washington, which we're really proud of. And we are on track to have Korean and Hindi launching in the fall. And this year we have created our own On the Way to K kindergarten readiness program at Woodridge Elementary School. Next slide, please.
At secondary, our focus has been on literacy instruction across subject areas through reading apprenticeship. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute, as well as the supportive mainstream model for our MLL students, using interim assessments to inform teachers' instruction, the use of adaptive software, and expanding, as we've talked about, the Arabic, Hindi, and Korean world language offerings. I did want to just explain a little bit more about this reading apprenticeship framework because I think it's really exciting and having a big impact, which is a focus on the teaching of literacy reading across content areas. And so rather than kind of expecting that reading is the kind of purview of the English teacher or the language arts teacher, and that we have students in interventions who need additional support, what we're doing is we're focusing on teaching reading across the content areas in discipline-specific ways. So reading in math is different than reading in science. It's different than reading in social studies. And so we're building our capacity to teach reading across those content areas. The reading apprenticeship framework also goes beyond the teaching of reading strategies and is a kind of a more of a holistic way of thinking about the development of a reading identity, that students' social emotional learning experiences have an impact on how they see themselves as readers. Their cultural, racial, ethnic identity has an impact on how they see themselves as readers, and especially at secondary, where students have internalized ideas about who they are as readers, as so-called struggling readers or strong readers. This framework is a way of thinking about identity as an important aspect of the teaching of reading. So it brings all those threads together. It has a strong emphasis on metacognition or meta-awareness. So when students are reading in a science class, the focus is not just on what the text says, but how what strategies they're employing and how they would know which strategy to use when, so that they're thinking not just about what they're reading, but how they're reading and how they're making sense of a text in different kinds of academic contexts. So we have about 100 educators trained at the secondary level using this framework. It's a real adaptive change because you've got to build capacity across all the schools and all the departments, and in some ways, it goes beyond what some of us think about what it means to learn in the disciplines, this emphasis on reading across content areas. So I do think it's a big reason that we are starting to see some of the reading results stabilize at secondary and show growth, especially in the last year. Next slide, please. Okay, so our next steps in this overall area of literacy, biliteracy, at the elementary level, continuing the focus on science of reading. As I just talked about, this discipline-based reading instruction at the secondary, that's a core next step. And we also know that while both of those components are foundational, that's not sufficient, that there's going to still be students who need additional support. So strengthening our tier 3 system of supports, both at elementary and secondary, is definitely a key next step for us.
And in addition to that, we are in the process of experimenting with 2 different elementary literacy curricula. And there was just this week an open house, and we expect later this month some feedback around a recommendation of curriculum for adoption next year. So that's a really important piece at the P5 level around providing really rich, culturally responsive literacy curricula that is rooted in the science of reading. And that's going to be a really big lift. So a lot of the capacity building next year at the P5 level is going to be centered around the successful implementation of the literacy curriculum. And then lastly, considering how and what early literacy measures we're using. So for example, we do use DIBELS and TRC, and each measure that we use has a purpose, and we want the classroom teacher to be able to utilize it for ultimately to guide instruction. And so one thing that is a next step for us is to consider what types of assessment data we're gathering and how we're using it to really support teachers and instruction in the classroom. So this is a midpoint of literacy for this year. And again, just a reminder, at the end of this year, you'll have an annual plan summary report where you will see all of this circle back with the end of year. So I think that that concludes the literacy part, and we have some time to hear some questions and some input and feedback. Next slide, please.
All right, so I guess I'm anticipating 2 rounds of discussion, and this would be the first round. And so Jane went first last time. You're trying to tell me something? Yeah, okay. And so Director Block would be the person who would lead off this discussion.
Thanks. I found this really educational and great to learn more about this process. I also appreciate the additional content you guys added to the presentation from our discussion. Not surprisingly, it also drives more questions and comments and feedback. I really like seeing, it's exciting to see that we're seeing either no or very little difference between pre-pandemic and current scoring. One of the things that I did notice in those figures, though, was that the fraction of students in that bottom category, the level 1, seemed to potentially be growing. I know we had some discussion about what's significant and meaningful from this data, and it may not be a meaningful growth, but that just drives concern to me that we could have an increasing number of students who are becoming discouraged or may not have fared well during the pandemic, and that may be affecting them for a longer period. And so trying to see what we can do to make sure we don't lose those students is of great interest to me. You didn't touch on it in the presentation, but I just want to reiterate it from the report. Concerns about the persistent low scores among specific demographic groups and the disparities between some of the demographic groups, particularly, seeing low income possibly as one of the drivers, as well as I believe it was special education or special needs being one of the other ones that could be drivers. Frankly, growth in some of the subgroups may be masking some of the issues that some of these students are having and may be driving some of those overall trends. And in particular, it strikes me that I believe it's becoming well recognized that higher income families and students appear to have fared much better through the pandemic than lower income families and students. The discussion of curriculum, I continue to wonder how we can best include parents and families in supporting and engaging with the curriculum. It's great to hear about the training for the teachers and how that's being rolled out to the students. Having been a parent through some of the math curriculum in elementary school, which was a different curriculum than what we have now, I found it very confusing to understand how to best engage. And I quite frequently drove my students back to their teacher and saying, that's not how I learned it. I don't want to teach you a system that's competing with what your teacher's teaching you. And so just reminding that, parents are engaging with their students and trying to support the curriculum. And sometimes we just don't know how. So if there's any lessons learned or ways that we can best engage with that. Going back to the report again, I still am a little troubled by the dichotomy in the 8th grade math scores between SBA and STAR. Those are the only ones where, looking back at them again and again, they seem to be telling opposite stories. And the other ones, there seems to be very high correlation. So I just want to dig into that a little bit further, or give you guys a chance to dig into that a little bit further, because it's concerning to me that they seem to be telling opposite stories. One seems to be going up and the other one going down, and one of them's right. They can't both be right. Thank you.
Okay, my turn. I feel like I'm going to say some things I might have said on Monday slightly differently for emphasis. On the pandemic catch-up data, my concern was, I don't know if you saw a couple weeks back, and I didn't bring the citation, there was a Seattle Times article where they were quoting a study that had looked at pandemic loss across Washington state, and they had looked at data from all 295 school districts, and they published in the Seattle Times about, the tragedy of the pandemic learning loss, which it has been for a lot of people. So I, did have some community members say, wow, and that Bellevue is part of that. They're one of the 295 schools that were looked at, and, we must have pandemic loss, and, and so what I'm thinking about, these people who don't have kids in the schools and aren't touching us, they are our voters. And so I'm thinking we need to take that chart or, really make it crisp and sort of make that argument that our kids have kind of at least maintained, and put it out there through our communication channels. And I'm just thinking, because the next time we have to do a levy or something, we don't want people being able to say, oh, that school district, they're not worth supporting because blah, blah, blah. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is, I guess I will reiterate my concern about the professional development, which you guys are concerned with. You had it a lot in your report. And just that we find ways to reach those teachers, because from what I saw, which isn't very much, but I flipped through that, was it that iFly book? Yeah, that's complex, from my perspective. And then also the Haggerty videos with the hand motions and things. It's not the way they learned how to teach it. And so I just really feel like people need support, and I'm wondering, how to get it to them. So I think I mentioned that before, but I'm just saying it again for emphasis, and I will hold the rest of my comments because I think we're going to have a second go round. Okay.
Great questions. Wow. Thank you for this super thorough report. Super impressive. I'm feeling the pain that we're on track for 8th grade, but also just really noticing those consistent low scores in certain demographic groups are still there. It's heart-wrenching, and it's mid-year and there's progress to be made. So many months and weeks still to go. Really impressed with the reading interventionists still occurring here at highest need schools and then at dual language schools. I recall that was a huge issue and question years ago, and to hear that there is a definite budget earmark for that is heartening to hear that that's occurring. I'm trying to look at this framework here that's on our slide about key takeaways, affirmations. I have a buzz going on here, George. I don't know if that's.
You have to stick to that.
Okay. Okay.
It's just an idea.
Okay. Still I'm getting a hum. I'll talk softer, perhaps. Really impressed with the reading apprenticeship framework. That sounded like it would get kids excited in a hurry about, just increasing their relevance for learning about reading in different content areas and the whole idea of metacognition. 100 teachers trained so far. It's like, oh, I bet this is going to be something to roll this out, right, in the coming months and years. So feels very hopeful. The other thing that really struck me was that new literacy curriculum that's grounded in cultural inclusiveness and science of reading. I agree with Director Block. It would be wonderful if we could have like a literacy fair or something where we could have parents and community come in and at least see or touch or ask questions of the folks who are piloting it or experiencing it right now. Overall, really impressive. I can't wait for the end of the year report. Thank you.
Director Webster?
Thank you so much. This feels so much cleaner today, and I just appreciate all the time that you all took in sort of making it such. So thank you very much. Yeah, I won't repeat some of what I've heard already, but really just really optimistic that we're going to continue to stay on this path of making progress, and really thankful for all of the hard work that our educators and building supports and staff have put in, to sort of continue making progress. So really thankful for that. My question, I have two of them. The first one is around the two curriculum that you mentioned. I'd like to know the names of those, if possible. And then my second question is more of kind of just informational for myself. I know that we're using Haggerty right now. Is that correct? And as I was doing some research, I came across another research-based learning program called Foundations, and it seems like it's favored among so many populations of school districts and people, and I'm just wondering if that had been a consideration. It seems to kind of be the preferred choice as opposed to Haggerty, and seems to at least the feedback is that it serves all kids. And so I just wanted to know more about how and kind of how the decision is being made around what those curriculum will look like. And yeah, so those are the questions that I had. Thank you. Thank
you. Director Ars?
Well, I'll add on to kudos to you for the additional slides and already. I'm going to echo the concern about our students that's falling below and in that red area growing. I'm assuming that the tutoring program that is being launched is to address the growing number or the numbers that it's at right now. I have a couple of questions. One, regarding the leading apprenticeship program. Love the fact that you have already 100 teachers trained. Curious when this was launched and if we have ways of measuring its success. I'm a big fan of multi-purposing all of our programs, and so our kids are maximizing all of their skills as much as possible, and having them practice the reading skills and literacy skills in all the subjects, I think is a fantastic thing to do. Writing skills and all those other things would be great too. I'm multi-layer them. But I'm curious to know, how are we going to make sure that it's it's a good program? Are we measuring it? And if so, how? And if it's a great program, how are we going to sustain it, to making sure that we are growing and making sure that everyone's getting trained in that space? The reading curriculum, the two that you've narrowed down to, I would love to see if we could get a sample for the board to take a look at it, maybe before a board meeting or something, to see, get a rundown of what that looks like. Great that it's culturally responsive, but beyond the culturally responsive, is curious to know how it will impact. Well, I know that it aligns with the science of reading, but also our MLL students, there's a multi-layers of cultural responsive. And so I want to make sure that we're addressing all the different layers. And also, how do we make sure that our parents are supported, as I think Director Block had mentioned, that with this new curriculum and new ways. I know that we have been on the bandwagon of a different type of reading program for many decades. And so we have a lot of parents who don't understand what the science of reading is. Mm-hmm. And it would be great to make sure that we support them as well, so that they know how to support their children at home. That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have time for the second part of your presentation, and I don't know, time is always of the essence, but if you could wrap up some of those things into it, and then.
Yeah. Are we not doing
we're going to have the second piece, and then we're going to go around again.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But not for literacy. Okay, well, in that case, let me just throw in my last question. So I did ask regarding additional data, and I understand that, and specifically for K1-2, because those are their foundational years, we're going to set our students up for success in all the other spaces. And I understand that it's a lot to dig into right now, but I do hope that we'll get some data around that for our end of the year report. I know it's out of norms and whatnot, and I think it would be a really great idea for you to give us clarity on why those two stars and the other, I'm blanking on the acronym here, why they're different. I think you've given us an explanation last year, but that was with the previous board members, and it may be good to kind of explain why they.
Okay, I'm sorry there. Thank you for pointing out, Kelly. Dr. Aramaki has got his hand up, and so I'd like to hear what he wants to say.
I just wanted to close this part out before we move to math, and I'll just say a couple things. One, around disproportionality of our outcomes. It is one of our most important things that we could do as a school district, and so I just want the board to know, addressing disproportionality in outcomes, that has to be how we determine the success of the Bellevue School District. So I wanted to make that statement. And then I wanted to say something about curriculum, which is we will be able to get curriculum information to the board just to kind of bring you along as we're looking at it. And I'll say our team that's working on it, they are focused on culturally responsive. They're focused on science of reading. They're focused on multilingual learning, and they're focused on ensuring that whatever we adopt comes in Spanish as well, to support our dual language schools. And so you'll be very impressed with the process, but we will find an opportunity to kind of bring that to you so you can take a look at that. And I do appreciate the comments about bringing families along with curriculum. It's a great way just to partner with families. And the third thing I'll just mention is we will bring different ways of looking at data to the board sometime between now and the end of the year. So whether it's looking at K2 DIBELS data, looking at, Dr. Block talked about like looking at cohort data, but there's different ways that we have in the past looked at data, but we'll try to compile some different ways of looking at data and then share them with you kind of as we go the rest of this year. And then that will help us inform what kind of data we want to look at as we go into the next strategic plan. So I just wanted to make those comments. We're going to switch to math. And then if something else comes up around literacy that you want to share, you can do it when you do your math sharing after the math report.
Okay, thank you. So let's go on to the report, part 2.
Okay, moving ahead here. So this next part is the focus on math. And again, you'll see the early learning and future ready later in the school year. With math, as you saw in the full report, we have some real bright spots that we call out and celebrate. And at the same time, the outcomes have been more inconsistent, and that disproportionality that Dr. Armaki was talking about definitely still persists. So we're going to talk about some of the details regarding math, but absolutely just focused on how we can continue to strengthen supports for students to get back. I mean, it's one thing to get back to the pre-pandemic levels, but those gaps existed before the pandemic. And so trying to close those achievement gaps is really the focus. Next slide, please.
All right, similar to literacy, you're looking at some composite star math data. This is again 3 through 5. And as was the case with literacy, at least at elementary, the percent proficient is identical between 2019 and current mid-year. So 69% proficient or better and 69% proficient or better. However, I do want to point out that several of you noted this too. The overall percentage proficient is the same, but we do, if you look at the trend data, we do have a widening gap. So the percentage of students in the blue, so above standard, is increasing, but so is the percentage moderately, but still so in the red. So when we think about, when we talk about multi-tiered systems of support and intervention supports, it's certainly something that we are observing and something to be aware of as we think about our next steps. So even though the overall percentage, it is good that it's where it was pre-pandemic, we want to continue to move beyond that, but the constitution within each of the levels has fluctuated in a way that is worth noting. Next slide, please.
Okay, so similar at secondary, although not identical. You see the pre-pandemic percent proficient is 69%. That's the green and the blue together. And this fall, it's at 62%. And then you see that that trend where actually nearly half of our students are at the exceeding proficiency level, but also that red bar is a lot larger than it used to be. So there's the idea of the widening gap, that the students at the high achieving level are really coming back to that high achieving level, and students in the middle are either moving up or down. So that middle bar is not as broad as it was. Okay, next slide, please.
All right, Director Watson, this may in fact be what you were referencing. I don't know in the Seattle Times, but this is actually from the New York Times. So we added this just for context because of our conversation earlier this week around how are both our district, how are we faring comparatively speaking to pre-pandemic and now, but then also just having a way to contextualize what that means for us in the state of Washington. So I'll give you just a quick voiceover of what you're looking at. This is a composite math. This is composite math data based on the state math assessment, Smarter Balance, for all of the districts within Washington state. And this was a project done by Stanford and Harvard together, collective, to understand a little bit more about how districts and states are recovering as we come out of the pandemic. And so it just gives us some context, right? It's one piece of information. But what you're seeing there is you can see as of 2023, the composite math scores on the state assessments, where the districts within this state fell along this line. And so what you can see is the farthest on the left would be 2 years behind. The US average is in the middle, 2019, 2 years ahead, and then beyond that. So like everything else, there's always context. And so what you can see is Bellevue's is on the right side with 4 districts ahead of us, which would indicate that we have perhaps not suffered as much learning loss as some other districts in the state. And the grain of salt there is that before the pandemic, we would have been ahead of most of the districts in the state as well. But we did want to include it because we thought that it was an insightful piece of information given our conversation. Next slide, please. Oh, it's me again. Okay, we were getting used to the back and forth.
Yeah.
All right, so here's some elementary pieces with regard to our math progress at midpoint of this year. And so the top two, I think I will put together because we spoke earlier this week about how this year, for the first time, we've launched a district-wide math walk process at the elementary level, where there's a cross-functional team that visits every elementary school in the district 3 times a year, beginning of the year, mid-year, end of the year, and we pop into math classrooms and we observe what's happening. And so everybody takes data and then we compile that. So as part of that process, that's been informative in so many ways, in terms of providing professional development for educators, finding areas of strength as well as opportunities. But at mid-year, and we just did the mid-year math walk about a week and a half ago, and we did get into every school in the district. We have 97% implementation fidelity with illustrative math, which we're in our year 3 of. So that really is pretty remarkable. And I don't like to brag too much, but that's pretty remarkable. And that's a testament to the educators, to the teachers, to the time that they're, and IM is really different than the previous math curriculum. And so that's a direct testament to the time and the collaboration that our teachers are putting into ensuring that we're doing right by these resources, right? So those two all put together. Also new this year, our teaching and learning department has established building-based math leads. And so there's some compensation that comes with this. It's an embedded support structure to help provide at each building additional teacher leadership. These are educators that are in these roles. So teacher leadership and embedded capacity building. And then we have also launched some high impact math tutoring pilots. And we are starting to see some promising results. So these are both pilots and a little bit of a program evaluation or action research, if you will. All right, next slide, please. All right, me again. So here's just a little bit of more information on the tutoring programs. And so again, these are at secondary. Aaron will talk about secondary and what's happening, but elementary, the pilots are just a little bit further along the road. So if you look at the collective body of research around intervention and support, one of the things that is very high prospect, I would say, would be high intensity tutoring if done well. So we want to do it well. So we have 4 elementary schools that are utilizing slightly different models. You can see the number of students in there, the grade levels, and then what you have there in the column, the second column, third column from the right is the average growth for students served by the tutoring programs. And then alongside that, the average growth for students not served in the tutoring programs. And then at mid-year, the growth comparison. So there's a couple of things we're going to be very excited to share this with you again at the end of the year, because what we'll talk about in next steps is how we might scale what's working. What you see represented ahead right in front of you here are both before, outside of school tutoring and during the school day tutoring. And then you also see represented a program that is being delivered by educators and a program that's being delivered by an agency. So there's lots of layers to this. So as we think about the results that we're getting, we can think about how we can scale that. So next slide, please.
Okay, and so these are the kind of core strategies we're working on at secondary. We do have a tutoring pilot going on at Highland and Big Picture. The elementary tutoring programs are a little bit further along. In the report, we shared a little bit about the wraparound supports for the students with limited and interrupted formal education. That's an initiative that's going on at Interlake. I wanted to just say a little bit more about the curriculum adoption and the professional development. So with the curriculum adoption, this again is the IM, the illustrative mathematics curriculum. We now have adopted that for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. We now have a fully aligned math curriculum through IM, kindergarten through algebra 2, which is, I think, the first time we've ever had that. So that's exciting. It's a coherent learning progression that focuses on a balance between conceptual understanding, procedural fluency and problem solving. And so as students go through 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, all the way through, they're not like moving from one math approach to another math approach. It's that balance between understanding, fluency, and problem solving. And with this curriculum, it includes an emphasis on the development of academic language with embedded language routines. So it's, I would say, much more culturally responsive because there is this support for the development of academic language for all learners, but especially language learners, which is a really nice overlap with the work that we're doing with reading apprenticeship. A lot more emphasis on the importance of academic language development in the context of a math class. The professional development that we're focused on at secondary, part of it is looking at models of professional development. So, there's the traditional model of educators go somewhere and learn something, and then they come back and they implement it. That's one model of professional development. We're also trying to develop what Dr. Sanchez has been talking about, this idea of embedded professional development with coaches and peer observations and studio days and a math fellows program, so that there's professional learning, professional development happening every day, all the time in classrooms. And a lot of that learning has been focused on a framework called Building Thinking Classrooms that really, I think, has transformed a lot of our secondary math classrooms. We've been coalescing around a set of 14 math practices. And just to kind of give you a sense of a couple of the practices, one of the key practices is the use of vertical non-permanent surfaces. So it's how math teachers are using the physical space. Traditionally in a math classroom, maybe you see students in rows, maybe you see students at a desk, maybe you see students at tables. The idea of the vertical non-permanent surfaces is that there are whiteboards around the room and students are up at the whiteboards collaborating, arguing, discussing, erasing, redoing, iterating problems. And the research that we're looking at through the Building Thinking Classrooms framework is showing that it's just much deeper way of developing conceptual understanding. Another example, so that would be like one practice. Another practice is looking at how questions are asked and answered. So this research looked at, as teachers are circulating, they typically over the course of a day are getting between 200 and 400 questions. And those questions fit into 3 different categories. One is the proximity question, where the student just happens to ask the teacher a question because the teacher's there. The other is the stop thinking question, which is typically like, is this right? Do I have the right answer? And then the third type of question is the keep thinking question. And the keep thinking question is the question that really is the question that teachers are trying to elicit more of from students. They want to not address the proximity questions and not address the stop thinking questions and try to generate more keep thinking questions and be more responsive to the keep thinking questions and pushing students' thinking. So the math teachers that have been doing this work are very excited about it. And when you're in a classroom where teachers are further along with this work, you absolutely know it, because it's exciting, it's engaging, it's inquiry driven. And that combined with the idea of embedded professional learning, I think is having a big impact on just math instruction, pedagogical shifts in general. So that's kind of the work that we want to highlight for secondary math. If we move to the next slide. Just to kind of talk about next steps here, as Dr. Sanchez talked about, we're excited about the work that we've started with the high intensity tutoring, both at elementary and secondary. We're going to be studying that and hopefully scaling the best practices that we are learning about this year.
And then, one of the things that we have been thinking about is how to best make use of time to build capacity, given some of the structures that we live within. And so one of the things we're really thinking about, again, is just to reiterate, is how we how we can embed capacity building in a real-time way for educators. The other piece of that is if you look at research around capacity building and professional development from organizations like Learning Forward, what you'll see is that embedded professional development has a higher level of retention anyway than the sit and get or the go to a workshop. So really thinking about utilizing structures that are just in time and supportive of our educators, like math leads, continuing to have our early release Wednesdays, but also how, as Mr. Miller was discussing, embedding it into the day side by side with teachers. And so we see a lot of promise through thinking about capacity building this way. And then just lastly, our multi-tiered systems of support. And so as we have all observed, we do continue to have some persistent gaps with many of our subgroups of students that are the farthest from educational justice. In addition to that, we do have a bit of a trend where we have more students moving to be above standard and more moving to be below, well below. So our divide is widening, which means that as a system, we have to think about how we are providing time for math intervention in addition to having a really strong tier 1 curriculum. So these are things that are going to are already on the forefront of our thinking, and we'll have an update with each one of these for the end of the year annual report summary. Okay, next slide, please. And I think now it's time for takeaways, affirmations, questions, wonderings.
Okay, so it's my turn to start this discussion, and I will say, based on some information from Dr. Alsbury, who is our board consultant, this is some of the most important discussion we can have as a board, the actual like teaching and learning and academics. And so it doesn't get more important than this. And I don't think we left enough time on our schedule because we would be done already. But I'm going to propose that we forge ahead, and then I'm going to at least swallow my director discussion comments because we need to do this. So to keep on track. So I just wanted to say about the tutoring, I had a chance to discuss that with Dr. Aramaki because I was concerned, and I do miss, the old volunteer tutoring program. But when you did that, you came in and whatever the kid was stuck on, you tried to help him with. But I do know that when families have the money to take their kid outside to tutoring, they go to a kind of tutoring, whether it's like Kumon or Singapore Math or any of these other math places, where they're given an assessment to see where their kid is, and then they methodically bring them up step by step through the material. You do this progression. I know for sure you do that in Kumon. And so my understanding was that that's what this outside agency is bringing sort of to the table. And if so, I really appreciate that because that addresses this huge inequity of who can afford outside tutoring and who cannot. So hopefully that will come to fruition. I don't know what more I want to say about that, but I did miss your open house last night. It wasn't really on my radar, and then I had something come up. But I was wondering if it's one of these, can we just kind of slip it in? Meaning that I always am interested in curriculum materials, and I managed to snag an illustrative math consumable workbook from a kid at the end of last year, and so I have the bits that he didn't use, that had left, and I kind of grabbed a copy of UFly from one of the PTA advocates and flipped through it, and I've seen maybe that metal tin with the number, the letters on it, to do the phonics and stuff. So I was wondering, maybe we could just bring some of that kind of stuff and the board could look at it like right after the board meeting so that we're not like the last to know what this stuff actually looks like. I know a lot of it's online, and I do have the advantage that my husband taught illustrative math in Edmonds. He taught algebra, so I got to see that kind of up close and personal. So I have more of a sense. I'm very optimistic about these materials. I will say some of those old math curricula that we had used to have like a family letter that came home. It wasn't like a great family letter, but maybe we could do something like that in the different languages and things so that people would maybe have a clue of where to start. And then I will say the other thing that came to mind while I was listening here was that recently I had a chance to go on a school board visit to Odell, and I went to the math classes, and I saw, like, it couldn't have been more night and day between what I saw in the gifted math class and what I saw in the gen ed math class. Both seem kind of, I don't know if they're, well, I could make observations, but I'm wondering about that, just that extreme difference in approach, and whether maybe that's something you're going to discover on your math walks, and how to best incorporate the good from all of these approaches. Anyway, let me pass it to next in line here, which is Director Rogan.
Again, I think there's so much to be proud about, and I'm really excited to see the data. It's again, we're making progress. We'll look forward to the end of the year report to hopefully celebrate a lot more. Something that really struck me is just, I think it was Dr. Sanchez that mentioned the heavy lift of PD that our teachers and our leaders and our support staff are experiencing right now, between a new literacy curriculum and this emphasis on math that is clearly going great guns in Bellevue. To see that national comparative math data chart, wow. I mean, that's seriously impressive, and it's, again, just have to acknowledge the people who are doing the work. I am really curious about how we use our Wednesday afternoons, right? It's a huge gift from our community that we have this time. I can't imagine doing what we do as a district in PD and PLCs without that time. So I just have to say that, can't be done without it. And I'm curious exactly what might be going on with math, with PLCs, because you mentioned there's math leads at all of the schools, and I'm wondering, are they facilitating the PLCs in math? Are they doing co-teaching? I'm just kind of curious about what the role of the math lead is specifically, and how that's being embraced by their peers. Really curious about the high intensity tutoring. I can't wait to hear more, especially with further analysis of each of the different kinds of tutoring that is occurring at each of the schools. So that's it. Thank you. Again, I'm playing catch up. I didn't see the full board report last week, but again, just really impressive. Thank you for the report.
All right. Yes, thank you again for the presentation. I know there were a lot of questions that came up on Monday, and it sounds like we got a lot of those answers today. So I'm really appreciative of that. And I just wanted to kind of recap some of the information or questions that I had around making sure that we're being intentional about engaging the kids who are not meeting the standard, like our Black and our Hispanic kids, our kids who are from under-resourced, circumstances, our English learners, our students with disabilities, and just making sure that there is equitable access to the high-intensity tutoring program that you mentioned. My son, as President Watson mentioned about the external tutoring, that's a luxury, quite frankly, was able to benefit from an external tutoring program at Sylvan, and it was really helpful, but a lot of families can't afford to have that as an option. So just really being intentional about making sure that all students are able to access that resource. And yeah, really like the idea of the math walk. I mentioned that on Monday, and it just really helps us to get an additional snapshot, of the students' experience in the classroom. So I'm really optimistic about that. And yeah, that's pretty much all that I had. Thank you.
Okay, Director Harris.
You guys outdid yourself. Very thorough. I have quite a couple of questions regarding the. I appreciate that we have a fluid math system from K to 12. I see math as a language like every other language, and there's a basic fundamental fluency we need to make sure that our students have in order to develop in the higher skills. And I also understand that we have a plethora of external tutoring services that our community tap into. My biggest concern right now is looking at that number, which in the red that have grown. And I also understand that is partly, I'm going to assume, based upon the number of students with high needs growing. My understanding, pre-COVID, we had about 200 McKinney-Ventos. Last year was 400, and this year we're reaching 600. And so, which means that we have a lot of students with a lot of needs, and also as well as our number of students who fall into free and reduced is growing as well. So I'm going to take account that that is pushing that number in the red. But understanding that there's a couple of things I wonder is that knowing that we have a very large number of our community that does use external resources to make sure their children are fluent and have that fluency in the basic of mathematical language. What are we doing to make sure that we're leveraging our resources to make sure that those students who don't have that external resources and are fundamentally can't have access to it, that they have that opportunity? I know the curriculum has plenty of math problems and opportunities to practice skill sets. Are we making sure that the teachers are utilizing all of it to build that fluency for our students, especially at the elementary level? Are they assessing our students, pre-assessing before they dive into, to not waste time on students who already have that fluency, but have them explore beyond the basic and making sure that students who don't have fluency have that access? I know we've emphasized on scaffolding and teaching our making our staff know how to scaffold. I hope that we're implementing. And I'm curious to know if you're measuring to see if teachers are actually utilizing that skill set. If not, what are we doing to make sure that they are utilizing it? And if they need more support in that, make sure that they have that skill set. Because I think that is one of the things that I've heard from teachers is that I don't know how still.
Okay, and Director Vaughn?
Would it be possible to go back to the slide on tutoring? I think it's slide 40 just for a second.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I was stunned looking back at this at Lake Hills because frankly, they're showing great growth in both the average growth for students not in the program and students in the program, which really suggests that there's something really great going on there. And there might be some lessons from that. So that's one thing, didn't want to miss that. Also, you mentioned it, and I think it's clear to a lot of us that there's both a growing number of students who are in that exceeds proficiency standards and ones that aren't approaching. And it makes me wonder if there's better or more ways to leverage those students to support their colleagues, their cohort, their show them that they're part of the same team and work together to bring up, because they're going to join the workplace together. They're going to continue through life together, and there may be opportunities there for them. I really appreciated the discussion on how to engage with students on their questions. I think that that's right on. I also want to make sure that we're thinking about how to best train students so that they all engage in those most meaningful questions, and to think about how ensuring that we're being equitable in the classroom participation. As a tall, white male whose last name starts at the beginning of the alphabet, I'm used to getting a lot of attention early, and I'm sure I've used that to my advantage at times. And I recognize that not everybody has all of those advantages. And so I want to make sure that we're being deliberate in making sure that there's equitable participation. And one of the ways to do that, obviously, is to engage in making sure that they're learning how to ask the questions in the right way, so that they're continuing their path towards growth in the classroom. Thank you.
Okay, I am aware that we're running late here. I think I'll leave it to you to, Dr. Arm. Okay, there you are. I'm sorry, I just not looking over at the
That's
screen.
okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to close out the math conversation. This was so good, and I took all notes just from what you were all saying. I just wanted to make a couple of closing comments. just responding to some of the things that you said. One, I think Director R has talked about, from before the pandemic till now, we have our homeless rate has doubled and our free reduced rate has doubled. And so even with that, we're seeing somewhat similar scores from before and after the pandemic. So I think that it is important to call that out. We still have a huge amount of work to do in math. I mean, math is the big focus for us, but it is, I appreciate you calling that out because the needs of Bellevue are really, really high compared to what it used to be. And we need to kind of acknowledge that new reality. In our mission, we talk about individualized support for kids. So if you see any students that are in the red, it really requires us to provide individualized, personalized support. And so it's very expensive, but it is something that we are committed to doing. Sorry, of course, coughing fit. For math tutoring, I just want to say it's all about equitable access to tutoring. And so at Lake Hills, the tutoring happens during the school day because as soon as school is over, trying to get kids to come back or to be able to provide support is inequitable. And so they're trying it out during the school day to maximize learning time while in math. And so when you look, Director Block, when you're talking about looking at Lake Hills, we have incredible teachers. We also invest a ton in co-teachers at that school. So there's more certified adults in the classroom and we're adding tutoring. And so you look at the tutored kids and the non-tutored kids, and they're outperforming everybody, which is really incredible. At Stevenson, it's after school, but we have a bus that transports kids back home and we provide snacks and all of that. So equitable access to tutoring. The agency we're working with is called Math Agency. And if you just Google Math Agency, Seattle Times, Northgate Elementary School, you'll see an article about that organization and how they approach tutoring and the impact that they've had on kids with smarter balance assessment, which is why we're using them and trying it out with them. And then the last thing I'll say is it's a huge success story around the adoption of curriculum. This is, being able to adopt a curriculum that's aligned to standards that was developed, the adoption process focused on the margins. And then what Dr. Sanchez talked about with the implementation, the support, the math leads, and then us going out and making sure that everyone's using it. And if not, getting the support that they need. And then the professional development on top of it. When all of that's working well, you see some pretty remarkable things in the classroom. And my last statement is about Bellevue High School. When you look at the work that they've done with what Aaron Miller talked about with their professional development and the changing the way that they teach math, it is so awesome. I mean, it is something worth the board going out and seeing, just to see kids up and about, talking, problem solving, asking good questions, and then the teachers just getting their steps in as they walk all the way around the classroom. So those are just kind of my last thoughts about math. But thank you for your comments about mathematics.
Okay, so now I know we're desperately behind schedule.
Can I just ask for one thing? Would you
No.
mind sending your slides?
Oh, okay.
This
Um,
Sorry, there's good content in there.
Okay, I realize I have 2 minutes to finish board business and board discussion, so we're not going to succeed here. But for board business, I have 2 quick motions that I'm going to move and hope someone will second. And they are based on things that we discussed at our retreat. So hopefully this isn't surprising, this will go smoothly. Okay. I move to appoint the following directors to serve as the board liaison to the specifically identified organizations. Director Aris to YouthLink and Eastside Pathways, Director Block to, oh, his name's spelled wrong on here, to Bellevue Schools Foundation, Director Rogan to Jubilee Reach and PTSA Council, President Watson to Bellevue Special Needs PTSA, and Vice President Webster to the Rainier Athletes. So, we have it up here on a slide. So that's the first motion. That last little bit is a second motion. So may I have the second for the first motion that I just read out?
Second.
Okay. And do we need discussion? Okay. Can I say all in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I didn't hear any nays. No? Okay. Now, the second motion. I move to have the board legislative representatives, currently directors RS and Block, serve as liaison to the Bellevue City Council and when appropriate, the city of Bellevue. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, now, do we have discussion? Okay, you do?
My only comment would be that I don't want to ignore the other city councils that are comprise our school district.
This is right. Does anybody want to amend the motion to sort of include that idea?
I amend that we change it to all cities and councils within our BSD district.
Okay, second?
I second.
Okay, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all in favor of the motion as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think we got that. I think it passed. We got all that board business done. Now, after discussion, we have no minutes, no pressure, but we will start with Director Rogan.
I'll be really brief. I'm just really looking forward to the Phantom Lake school visit on Tuesday to see math and literacy in action. I am just yippee skippy about the opportunity to see little ones in the process of teaching and learning. So keep it brief.
Director Webster?
I'll delegate my time.
Okay. Director Aris?
I'll just limit to one thing. As we discussed, Director Webster and I will be heading to the National Board Conference. Since I have not heard from rest of you as far as what information you would like to bring us back, I did sign myself up for this special session, which is hopefully will give us some good tips on how to best serve that space as a board director. But there are other sessions at the conference that I would love for you guys to give us, an opinion or two, if there's something specific like you would like for us to attend and gather that information to bring back.
Okay, we're gonna step out for a second. All right, you have one thing you have to add?
I apologize. So I did also sign up for the Becoming More Engaged and Inclusive Strategy for Supporting Our LGBTQ plus students. So that's the
Okay,
one that
thank
I'm going
you.
to.
All right, and let's rotate over to Director Block.
I want to just acknowledge the continuing good work of the Sustainability Committee. We had a great meeting 1 week ago, where it was really great to see some of the student voice in identifying some of the long-term vision and long-term planning for the Bellevue School District. I also want to just recognize that we reached the end of a lot of the winter sports season, and a lot of our local teams and individuals are competing for regional and state championships, and it's really great to see all the achievements and progress of all those athletes. Not to be forgotten, the theater groups are also reaching their performances for musicals in a lot of areas, and much like the robotics team as well. We're seeing a lot of the winter season activities reaching kind of the pinnacle of their achievement, and that's really great to see and exciting to celebrate.
Okay, I think I'm last here. I'll just say, for the conference, if it's like the state conference, there's an app, and then sometimes the slides and stuff are embedded in the app. I don't know if that's true, but no, there isn't. Okay, too bad, because I downloaded all of those and bring them up as appropriate to things. So like even with the onboarding, I passed Cindy some slides from that. So if they had that, I was going to say bring it to us. If they don't, they don't.
So,
And
yeah, the NSBA did the advocacy conference and they didn't do that, requested it.
Oh, okay. And then the other point I was going to make is we are working on the director onboarding, and I just have some ideas for Cindy around the 6 things that WASDA points out as being the duties of the school board, and then how we actually try to accomplish those within Bellevue. And so we'll be going over that. Okay. So much for board discussion. All right, we were according to this, we were supposed to be ending this part, not adjourned, going on our break from 6:30 to 6:45, and then we will have a strategic plan study session from 6:45 to 8. So let's go do that now. Thank you. No stress here. Oh.